June 8, 1996, 2:07 p.m., Gene C., Idaho. In a fenced backyard off West Chestnut Street, 67-year-old Walter Briggs and his 19-year-old granddaughter, Ava, toss a red disc. At 2:32 p.m., Dana Briggs steps out from the laundry room. The yard is empty. The gate is locked. The dirt shows no tracks. What happened to Ava Briggs and Walter Briggs between 2:07 and 2:32 p.m.? 15 years later, spring 2011, a young couple opens a long-sealed shed behind the same house. A small detail inside restarts a dead file. One red object refuses to stay quiet tonight, at last. The first report framed it as a walk-off. The tree line is thin here. It ends at an old barbed fence, then open fields. You can see the whole strip from the back steps. Deputies marked a grid and swept the brush. Nothing turned. No shoe prints. No broken boards. No sign of forced exit on the gate. Walter was a routine man. Early coffee. Radio at 6. Glasses on a shelf by the door. Ava had just finished her first semester at the local college. She came back to help her mother after a rough divorce. That afternoon, they ate sandwiches on the back steps and took the disc outside. The timestamps in the call log fix those minutes. Neighbors said they heard nothing. No dog bark. No shout. A cruiser idled on Chestnut Street by sunset. Flashlights crossed the fence line. The file grew thick with identical notes. Missing. Presumed voluntary. Search suspended after 7 days. The case cooled because there was nothing to hold. But even cold pages show seams. One deputy, then 23, logged a single print facing the house, not the fields. It was noted and never used. A receipt surfaced for plywood and rope, paid cash, week prior. It was copied and misfiled under yard maintenance. Years passed. Ownership changed. The shed rusted shut. The town looked away. In March 2011, a locksmith cracked the old hasp so the new owners could clear junk. The call to the sheriff's office came less than an hour later. The same deputy, now seasoned, walked back into the yard he never forgot. He stopped at the threshold and took a long breath. The scene was familiar, but one small thing was not. He asked for lights, fresh bags, and a camera before anyone moved. He marked the table. He marked the floor. He marked the spot where dust stopped as if a hand had brushed it clean. Then he called his supervisor and waited in the doorway, eyes on the red disc he had not seen since 1996. The yard had not changed. The questions had. Who handled that disc, and when? Walter Briggs kept a strict routine. He rose at 5:30 a.m., brewed coffee, and logged the weather on a lined card by the sink. He saved the cards in a rubber-banded stack. He worked 41 years at a mill in Moscow, Idaho. He retired with a modest pension and a habit of fixing things with scrap lumber. He did not own a firearm. His prescription glasses sat on a hook by the back door. He wore them to read the county paper and to walk the fence line every Friday at 6 p.m. Ava Briggs was 19 and home from her first semester at Lewis Clark State College. Her driver's license listed 5'6" and 131 pounds. She ran 2 miles most mornings. She wore blue Converse, women's size 8. She moved back after her mother's divorce to help with bills and to regroup. She worked weekends at a feed store on South Main Street. Her time card for June 1st and June 2nd shows 8-hour shifts and cash tips recorded in ink. Dana Briggs rented the house on West Chestnut Street after leaving a marriage that ended with debt and harassment. Her ex, Scott Riker, 34, had 2 small claims judgments in Larter County. He carried past due notices and told friends he would get what's his. A pawn record from March 7, 1994, shows a .38 revolver under his name. A later ticket marks it redeemed and then repledged. He favored an army surplus jacket regardless of weather. The property to the west belonged to Earl Donovan, a scrap dealer who vanished in 1995. His land held an outbuilding, a gutted barn, and a row of storage units behind bent chain link. He filed 3 boundary complaints against Walter in 1993 and 1994. Deputies closed the last call with no action when both men refused to move a rusted fence post. Neighbors described Walter and Ava as close. They ate lunch together on the back steps at 1:35 p.m. on June 8, 1996. They played disc in the yard 15 minutes later. The home phone bill shows a 2-minute call from Dana to a coworker at 2:24 p.m. Her return to the yard at 2:32 p.m. started the first 911 call. If you follow cold cases built on evidence, subscribe so you don't miss the next release. One detail in Walter's routine will matter more than anyone understood. June 8, 1996, started clean on paper. At 1:35 p.m., lunch ended on the back steps. At 1:47 p.m., the red disc came out. At 2:07 p.m., a neighbor saw Walter and Ava near the maple by the east fence. At 2:24 p.m., Dana placed a 2-minute call from the kitchen phone. At 2:32 p.m., she stepped outside. The yard was empty. The gate was still locked from the inside. The dirt showed no tracks leading out. Deputies arrived at 3:11 p.m. They logged the fence line and the tree line behind West Chestnut Street. The tree line ends at a barbed wire run and open field. A person cannot vanish there without crushing grass or bending wire. No bends were found. No crushed lanes were seen. A quick canvass started at 3:38 p.m. 5 neighbors were interviewed by 5:15 p.m. 2 reported hearing nothing unusual between 2 o'clock and 2:30 p.m. 1 mentioned a sedan idling on Chestnut around noon. No plate was taken. A grid search began at 7:10 p.m. Measuring tapes marked 10-foot lanes. Flashlights walked the brush in parallel. Nothing turned. A bloodhound was called at 9:22 p.m., then cancelled when wind shifted and daylight died. The first incident report closed at 11:56 p.m. with missing, no sign of foul play. The next morning, a supervisor checked the gate latch. It showed no fresh tool marks. He noted 1 scuff at the base of the post. Deputy Evan Cole, then 23, flagged a single print by the west fence. It faced the house, not the fields. He photographed it with a disposable camera from his patrol bag. The image was underexposed and never scanned. Cole also logged a smudge on the mailbox that matched black paint on the disk's rim. That note was folded into a maintenance subfolder by mistake. It sat unreviewed for 15 years. Donovan's property was not searched beyond the legal fence because no warrant was sought. Earl Donovan had filed boundary complaints in prior years, which should have triggered a targeted walkthrough. It did not. A hardware store receipt for plywood and rope dated June 1st, paid in cash, was copied and labeled yard work. Scott Riker told deputies he was in Pullman at 2:30 p.m. A gas receipt placed him there at 3:12 p.m., which proved nothing about 2:15. By sundown on day 2, the case had language but no center. One detail still refused to match the official story. In March 2011, Deputy Evan Cole signed back into the records room at the Larter County Sheriff's Office. He requested the original 1996 case binders, the photo envelopes, and the CAD dispatch tapes. The property log showed for transfers and a misplaced subfolder labeled yard maintenance. He asked for that, too. The clerk rolled out 2 gray boxes and a carton of negatives from disposable cameras used on the first night. Many sleeves were unscanned. Several labels were wrong by a day. Cole built a clean timeline on a legal pad. He wrote each entry with a minute stamp. The 2:07 p.m. sighting sat against the 2:24 p.m. kitchen call and the 2:32 p.m. 911. He checked the witness statement that supported 2:07. The officer copy said 2:17 in faint pencil. The digitized statement said 2:07. The correction had never been reconciled. He flagged it. He pulled the yard maintenance subfolder. Inside was the hardware receipt dated June 1st for 2 sheets of plywood, 3 lengths of rope, and a cheap lock. Cash. The clerk's note from 1996 said fence repair, but no repair was documented. A second paperclip held a Polaroid of the mailbox with a black scuff. Another slip read "Disc rim matches." The slip had not been indexed. Cole then requested pawn records for 1994 and 1995. Scott Riker's name appeared 4 times at a shop in Moscow. The .38 revolver showed redeemed in April 1994 and repledged that fall. A 5th entry showed a camping lantern and a jerry can. The date sat uncomfortably near June 8, 1996. He noted the pattern and moved on. He checked county files for Earl Donovan. 3 boundary complaints were logged against Walter Briggs in 1993 and 1994. One included a sketch of a disputed fence bend within 10 feet of the west gate. The responding deputy wrote that both parties refused to move the post. A planned walkthrough of Donovan's outbuildings was postponed for lack of a warrant and never rescheduled. At 4:12 p.m., Cole opened a thin evidence envelope misfiled with the negatives. It held a single black and white print of the backyard. The back read, in block letters, June 8, 1:45 p.m. The time undercut every sworn hour in the file. He looked at the fence line in the frame and saw a shape at the edge that no one had ever named. One photograph was about to move the clock. They brought in lights at 7:48 p.m. and treated the shed like a fresh scene. Evan Cole photographed the table, the red disc, the blue Converse pair, and Walter's brown frames. Each item was bagged and sealed with new evidence tags. The dirt under the table had a shallow rise, 6 feet long, 20 inches wide. The outline was clean, as if someone leveled it with a board. A trowel test broke crust and sank. Cole stopped and called the forensics lead before any further probing. The first cut exposed a small wooden box the size of a lunch cooler. It was hand-built, with tarnished hinges and a cheap latch. Inside were folded pages, brittle and stained. 2 were typed lists of purchases matching the June 1st receipt: plywood, rope, a steel hasp. Several were in Walter's blocky hand. One note read, "Call Donovan re-boundary," followed by, "Don't tell Dana." Another read, "I tried. Help her." A black and white print lay on top. It showed the backyard on June 8 at 1:45 p.m., written in block letters on the back. The angle captured Walter and Ava by the east fence. A third figure stood at the frame's right edge in an armor-style jacket. They opened a wider trench. Below the first layer was a second container, larger, nailed shut in a rush. Crowbar pressure lifted the lid and released stale air. No remains were visible. A green metal footlocker sat inside, dented and cold. A rotted cloth bundle held crude marker sketches on notebook paper. The drawings were signed Baby and showed a stick figure beside a large rectangular shape with hard edges. The proportions did not match the shed's footprint. The footlocker latch popped after a short pry. Inside was a .38 revolver with surface rust and an oily rag. Under it sat a newspaper clipping dated May 1995 about Earl Donovan reported missing. The gun serial was legible. Cole read it off to dispatch for a pawn query. The first ping came back to a Moscow shop with Scott Riker's file attached. The mailbox scuff and the rim mark on the disc were rephotographed under the new lights. The distances in the image matched the first night measurements. One detail still cut across the official timeline. Someone stood behind the lens that afternoon, and no one said who. They rebuilt the scene from the shed outward, then from the back steps inward. The backyard measured 42 feet by 31. The east fence ran along a shallow grade. The gate latch faced the house and locked from the inside with a thumb slide. The wood showed wear but no new pry marks. The mailbox post stood 12 feet from the steps. The black paint transfer on its edge matched the crescent on the disc rim. On the table inside the shed, the red disc, the blue Converse pair, and Walter's glasses sat in a straight line. Dust rings showed the objects had been moved recently and then set back. A fresh smear cut across the tabletop grain, 3 inches wide, as if a sleeve brushed it. The floor under the table was tamped soil over hardpan. The first trench revealed the small wooden box of notes and a dated photograph. The second trench revealed the larger crate and the green footlocker. No blood was documented on wood or soil. A phenolphthalein test on tool swabs read negative. UV sweeps, however, lifted nylon fibers near the trench edge that did not match the rope listed on the receipt. A fragment of blue canvas thread caught on a nail head on the shed jamb. It was collected and sealed. A short hair was recovered from the inside of Walter's frames. The lab catalogued it as light brown, medium shaft, no root bulb visible. Outside, the yard told its own limits. Grass near the swing set lay flat in 2 parallel strips, 6 feet apart, oriented toward the house, not the fields. A single shoe print, photographed in 1996 and again in 2011, angled back toward the steps. The tread pattern was consistent with a women's Converse, size 8. A second, partial print overlapped it, wider and longer, likely a men's size 10 to 11. It could not be fully cast due to degradation. Walter's routine placed him at the fence on Fridays at 6 p.m., but June 8 was a Saturday. His glasses on the table contradicted his habit of hanging them by the door. Ava's time card showed cash tips for June 1st and June 2nd, which explained the hardware store purchase if she helped pay. The shed did not explain the third figure on the 1:45 p.m. photo. One object inside the footlocker did. Dana Briggs agreed to a recorded interview on March 18, 2011, at 10:06 a.m. in Gene C. She confirmed the lunchtime at 1:35 p.m., the 2-minute kitchen call at 2:24 p.m., and her step into the yard at 2:32 p.m. She added a detail not in 1996. Scott Riker called her cell on June 7 at 9:11 p.m. He said, "You can't keep her from me," then hung up. The carrier record shows a 1-minute incoming from a blocked number, routed through a Pullman switch. Neighbor Luann Morton, interviewed at 11:02 a.m., remembered a sedan idling on West Chestnut around noon on June 8. She saw a man in an armor-style jacket step out, look toward the Briggs yard, and light a cigarette. She did not take a plate. She did not see him again. She remembered the jacket because it was warm and he wore it zipped. A follow-up with the pawn shop in Moscow produced 5 slips linked to Scott Riker. The owner confirmed the .38 revolver transactions in 1994. He also recalled Scott buying a camping lantern and a spare fuel can in early June 1996. He did not verify the exact day but said the first week before the town parade. The register tape for June 6 shows lantern fuel sold for cash at 11:53 a.m. Deputy Evan Cole requested any 1996 photos or home video from neighbors. Luann produced a box of prints and a short VHS clip from a family camcorder dated June 8. The clip shows children in a sprinkler at 1:50 p.m., then pans to Chestnut Street. A dark sedan sits at the curb. The driver's door is open. A man's arm, with a sleeve pocket and a rectangular patch, rests on the roof. The camera swings away before the face appears. The video clock is unsynced but includes the wall clock in the Morton's kitchen on the counter at 1:52 p.m. Cole cross-checked the black and white backyard photo labeled 1:45 p.m. with the VHS. The light angles match within minutes. The third figure at the frame's right edge shows the same pocket placement and sleeve patch shape. Dana identified the jacket as Scott's standard coat from 1993 to 1996. At 2:41 p.m. on March 18, the sheriff's desk received a call from a restricted number. A male voice said, "Don't open that shed," then ended the call. The switch trace pointed to a payphone outside Donovan Storage and Auto. The case split along 2 lines in March 2011. One line said a voluntary walk-off turned tragic. The other said the scene was staged to look that way. Evan Cole wrote both theories on a whiteboard and began crossing items off. The locked gate argued against a walk-off. The thin tree line argued against hiding in place. The single print facing the house argued against flight. The photo stamped 1:45 p.m. argued that an unknown person was present when no one admitted it. The sedan on West Chestnut complicated Riker's statements. His Pullman gas receipt at 3:12 p.m. did not cover 2:15 p.m. The pawn record tied a .38 revolver to him in 1994 and again that fall. The lantern, the fuel can, and the June timing suggested travel and nights outside. Dana's phone log captured his threat at 9:11 p.m. on June 7th. The Morton's VHS showed an armor-style sleeve and pocket hours later. Each piece was minor alone. Together they built a picture that did not match the original report. Donovan's history could not be ignored. He filed boundary complaints in the years before he vanished. His storage yard sat behind a patchwork fence and a sunken gate. A call warning "Don't open that" shed pinged the payphone outside Donovan Storage and Auto at 2:41 p.m. on March 18th. The shed held plywood and rope on paper. The yard showed rope fibers that did not match that model. The drawings signed Clay B featured a rectangle with sharp corners, not the shed's proportions. Cole drafted an affidavit for a narrow warrant. He asked to document Unit Number 12 at Donovan Storage and Auto, limited to property linked to Walter or Ava. He included the photo timing error, the VHS corroboration, the pawned revolver, and the call trace. A judge signed the order for daylight service within 72 hours. Patrol units were assigned to hold the lane and to log anyone who approached the payphone. Scott Riker learned about the new search within a day. He called Dana from a restricted number at 7:32 p.m. and said, "You think you're safe now?" The call lasted 12 seconds and disconnected. The carrier confirmed it originated from a tower that covers Dry Creek Road. The board in Cole's office had a new line drawn with a marker. It ran from West Chestnut to Donovan's Gate, then out toward Dry Creek. One more step would test the entire map. The warrant for Donovan Storage and Auto was served at 9:06 a.m. on March 21, 2011. Unit Number 12's roll-up door stuck halfway, then lifted with 2 officers pulling. Inside sat an older green and white camper with flat tires and a cracked vent. The air smelled like oil and dust. A tag on the hitch read, "Last registered 1995. The key from the shed did not fit the camper, but the side door was unlocked. Evan Cole started with photographs. He documented the dinette, the tiny sink, and a plywood patch in the floor. Under the dinette, a loose panel hid a metal cash box the size of a showbox. Inside were Polaroids, a folded county map, and a logbook made from a stenographer's pad. Several Polaroids showed Ava on the camper step, wrapped in a blanket, eyes toward the lens. No injuries were visible. No date stamps were printed. On the back of one, a marker line read "For days." The map had circles along a gravel spur off Dry Creek Road. One circle was labeled DC-12. The logbook listed fuel stops, amounts, and miles, with entries ending the week of June 8, 1996. One page carried a short note, "Anchor 2 sheets, tape seams, no noise after dusk." Another read, "Watch fence, Friday man." The handwriting was blocky and inconsistent, likely written with a non-dominant hand. Crime Lab took swabs from the camper table and the plywood patch. Latent prints were partial and smeared. Soil scraped from the wheel wells matched a mineral signature collected from the Briggs backyard, quartz-feldspar ratios and trace mica consistent with that lot. A blue nylon fiber from the camper cushion matched the thread collected on the shed jamb. Both were consistent with a commercial top brand sold at a hardware store on June 1, 1996. Cole pulled camera logs from 2 service stations on Highway 8 for June 6 to 9, 1996. The tapes were long overwritten, but registered journal survived. A lantern fuel sale on June 6 at 11:53 a.m. matched the pawn shop invoice entries for that week. A cash fuel purchase at 3:12 p.m. on June 8 placed Scott Riker in Pullman after the time of disappearance but left a gap for the critical half hour. The anchor note, the map circles, and the "For days" the line reframed the case from minutes to a timeline of custody. One more location from the map would decide whether theory turned into proof. The circles on the map were not decoration. On April 12, 2012, deputies served a second warrant limited to the Dry Creek Spur. The order cited the cache log, the DC-12 mark, soil transfer from the camper, and the shed photo time error. A forestry gate led to a pullout with tire ruts under duff. 40 yards in, ground-penetrating radar showed a shallow anomaly, 3 by 5 feet, 20 inches deep. The team cut a clean trench and screened soil by quarter-inch mesh. They recovered a small bundle of fabric consistent with a blue tarpaulin, 2 lengths of cord, and a women's Converse eyelet strip. A thin ring with AB scratched inside lay in the same layer. A compact fragment of cortical bone surfaced near the north edge. No further remains were exposed. All items were sealed on scene and logged with a fresh chain. The area was backfilled after photographs, GPS fixes, and a total station sketch. The lab released a preliminary report on May 3. The bone fragment carried mitochondrial DNA that matched Dana Briggs as maternal relative. A hair from Walter's glasses had no root and yielded no nuclear profile. The top fibers matched the thread pulled from the shed jam and the camper cushion. The cord was a retail type sold at the same hardware store on June 1, 1996. Trace soil from the trench matched the quartz and mica signature from West Chestnut. Evan Cole drafted a probable cause statement and met with the prosecutor on May 9. The charges proposed were kidnapping resulting in death and felony murder under state law. A judge signed the arrest warrant for Scott Riker at 6:42 p.m. on May 11. He was taken into custody the next morning without incident at a trailer off Dry Creek Road. He asked for counsel and made no statement. At arraignment, the defense moved to suppress the shed and storage evidence, arguing broken chain of custody from 1996 to 2011. The court held a 2-day hearing. The judge excluded the original underexposed footprint photo but admitted the 2011 recoveries and the Dry Creek items. The order emphasized independent grounds for each warrant and continuous sealing once the case reopened. A trial date was set for March 2014, with a discovery cutoff in December. One last piece still needed context before a jury could see the full route. Jury selection began March 3, 2014, at the Larter County Courthouse in Moscow, Idaho. 12 were seated by late afternoon. Opening statements were brief. The prosecutor promised a timeline built from documents, photographs, fibers, soil, and DNA. The defense said there was no body and no direct eyewitness. Evan Cole took the stand first. He walked the panel through June 8, 1996, minute by minute. He explained the locked gate and the thin tree line. He described the mailbox scuff and the disc rim crescent. He acknowledged the underexposed footprint photo and confirmed it was excluded. He then moved to 2011 and 2012. He introduced the shed notes, the 1:45 p.m. photograph, and the second trench with the footlocker. A crime lab analyst testified to the .38 revolver's serial number linkage to Scott Riker's pawn records. She said no usable prints were recovered. She then explained the blue nylon fiber from the shed jam and the matching fiber from the camper cushion. A second analyst addressed soil. He compared quartz, feldspar, and mica ratios from the camper wheel wells and the Briggs yard. He called the match highly consistent and unlikely to occur by coincidence. The state played the Morton's VHS clip. Jurors saw the dark sedan and an arm with an armor-style sleeve and pocket. Dana Briggs identified the jacket as Riker's usual coat in the mid-1990s. A telecom witness confirmed the June 7 threat call and the March 18 payphone warning near Donovan Storage and Auto. A forensic anthropologist addressed the Dry Creek recovery. She described the single cortical bone fragment, the ring-scratched AB, and the tarpaulin pieces. She stated the mitochondrial DNA matched Dana as Ava's maternal relative. The defense cross-examined on chain of custody. They argued the gap between 1996 and 2011 tainted the file. They suggested the camper could have been moved by someone else. They said the map circles were guesswork. The handwriting expert answered that the logbook was likely written with the non-dominant hand, which supported concealment, not authorship by a stranger. The judge reminded jurors to weigh patterns, not speculation. Closing arguments ran under 40 minutes. The jury deliberated for 9 hours over 2 days. On March 12, 2014, they returned guilty on kidnapping resulting in death and felony murder. The judge imposed life without parole. One question lingered on the evidence cart map. Sentencing did not close the file. On June 20, 2014, the defense noticed appeal on evidentiary grounds. They challenged the Dry Creek warrant, the fiber linkage, and the soil comparison. The state answered that probable cause stood on independent sources and fresh chains of custody. On March 3, 2015, the appellate court affirmed. The opinion noted the coherent mosaic of non-biological proof and the mtDNA identification. The sheriff's office issued a post-trial memo in May 2015. It ordered standardized recovery for cold scenes reopened after long gaps. The memo required digital rescans of legacy negatives, independent clock checks on home videos, and soil controls from all candidate sites. It added a directive to document storage units that border disputed property lines. Evan Cole ran the first training in July. He used the Briggs file as a case study and kept the red disk sealed. Dana Briggs asked for privacy. She declined a public memorial and visited the Dry Creek site once with detectives. She left a written statement with the court, "I accept the verdict." She did not request restitution. She asked that the court seal her new address and employer records. The court granted both requests. In 2016, the lab returned a supplemental report. The revolver yielded no recoverable profile. The hair from Walter's glasses remained non-probative. The blue nylon fibers matched a brand sold in the county that summer. The ring-engraved baby was photographed and released to Dana. The court maintained the rest of the property in evidence. Public reaction split in familiar ways. Some said the conviction rested on patterns, not people. Others said the patterns were the point. Local columns debated whether no-body cases should need higher thresholds. Prosecutors held a forum in September 2016 and walked residents through the filings and photos. The questions turned practical. How do you measure time in a missing window? What stands up after 15 years? In 2017, a records request surfaced the cache log's blank space after DC 12. A later page marked a second circle faintly, then scratched it out. Investigators filed a supplemental search plan tied to that entry. The plan stayed active but unfunded. One faint circle on a Warren County map still has no X beside it.